If you like this surface as it is, you can just use this. However, there are several other ways that you can create a surface. So let's start by looking at tween curves. So to do tween curves, we need a dupe on the command line, dupe edge. There's dupe border, dupe edge, dupe face border, and you can play with those. We're going to do dupe edge. So I'm going to select both edges. So there's 18 of these sections in this way. So I'm going to type tween curves, and it says start, and it says start and end, and it says number. So I want, let's say 16 in between. So if I type 16, let's put on the right layer, subcurves, change object layer. So if I put it on the this layer, you can see that it will just take the average of this and this curve and draw all the in-between curves. Now, my deformation doesn't start until quite a bit over, so let me just move it over and delete all these other curves. And then I will try again. Tween curves, start, end. And this time number is maybe more than that. 10. Okay. And change object layer. So if you like these curves and you think that they match what's in the image, you can actually, if you have a elevation of this or a section, you can trace each of these curves to each of their curves. You can also sweep to get a surface. So if I select these curves, I can then, I need to draw another cross-sectional curve. And then I can type sweep. Let's start with sweep 1. If you type sweep 1, basically it's asking you for a rail. This is my rail. And then it says select cross-section curves. And then it will ask you all these questions. You can just leave it as is for now. Change object layer. And basically it's an extrusion almost. You can change this by selecting a secondary rail, which is more interesting. So sweep to first rail, second rail, and then it says cross section. And then I'm going to just change the layer of this by double clicking so it'll extrude on the right layer. I'm going to say okay. So you can see that this is the first one. I can delete it. You can see it here in the background. And this is the second one. It's a fairly straight extrusion. You can also rotate this. So if I turn off the gumball for 1 second, because it conflicts with that, I just want to select this control point. Then let's say I move it up by 5. Let's try the sweep again. So sweep 1, select this rail curve, then select cross-section curves. So you can see that it's trying to create a sweep in following that angle, but it has some issues here. So it's not very good to create two one single rail curve. Let's try this way. Sweep 2, select first rail, select the second rail, and then select the cross-section curves. Okay, so this time I think it's a little bit more interesting. So that would be like a straight extrusion. This would be a sweep, but it doesn't have any curvature. You could cage edit this and deform this so it curves a little bit more in sort of a spline way rather than such a straight line. But that's the way we sweep. Also, you can loft. And so to loft, you can use all these curves if you want. And then you can loft. So if we loft these, just these 3 curves, you see we get a fairly steep surface, and there's some deformity here. So it dips and then it comes back up. The more curves you have to control your loft, the better. So if we take some more curves, let's take some more. This time I'm going to take 2 curves, so this one and this one, as well as this one and this one. And I'm lofting again, okay? I'm going to leave it as these default. And see if I take 2 curves, now it bows a little bit more. It's not bad, actually. So if you have trouble and you're looking for kind of an in-between surface, you can actually take 2 surfaces, for example, these 2, or even if you have better surfaces, you could use those. And if you put them against each other, you can do tween surfaces. Tween surfaces, so start surface and surface. And let's say I want a few, I want 4. Or in between surfaces. Maybe 3 is good enough. So then we have in between surfaces now. Let me change that so you can see. So it's taken one surface and another surface and then given me the average. And you can either select which surface you want, or if you imagine that they're at a smaller scale, they could also be a screen. So that's over here. I've just collapsed it. So you can also create a surface from a network of curves. So this is our lofted form, and I like the curve here, but if you notice, there's a kind of irregularity here. So it dips below the 0 line, the ground plane. I want to get rid of that. So I'm going to keep everything except for this thing. So if I type duplicate edge, and I'm going to duplicate this edge, and this edge. And then let me move it over, change the layer. And then I'm going to move it. So it starts to deform roughly there. So if I can cut off that area, that would be best. So trim, select cutting objects, and then select the items I want to trim. If I create a surface, network surface, with just these curves, so to use network surface, you need curves in the X direction on both sides as well as Y on both sides. You're going to see that what happens is I don't have that curve on the back still. So to get that curve, I need one more of these splines. So I'm going to type interpolate curve on surface. That allows me to draw a curve on here very quickly. So let me just, okay, you can ignore that. So now I have 5 curves. Type network surface again, and it asks me to select. I'll just select everything. So hold down the left mouse button and drag for everything, and hit space bar. And now you can see that it's much better. So I like it. Let's just keep it. And then we have all our different types of surfaces.